Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani and Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani and Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm indecorous story expert, Lani and Rich.
And I'm film scholar and anatomy enthusiast, Noelle.
And we're here today to talk about Some Assembly Required, the second episode of Season 2. Some Assembly Required first aired on September 22nd, 1997, and was written by Ty King and directed by Bruce Seth Green. Ty King will write just one more episode of Buffy, this season's 17th episode, Passion, which is amazing.
A warning before we begin, every episode of Still Pretty talks about each episode within the greater context of all of Buffy, and as such, is fully spoiled. So, hey, I got a thing, you're maybe feeling a thing, and there could be a thing. All right, let's go on patrol. In Some Assembly Required, Buffy's in the graveyard waiting on a new vampire to rise and fighting with a vampire who rose a long time ago. She dispatches the fresh vampire, then falls into an open grave and discovers that it didn't belong to a vampire.
Whoever was buried here didn't rise from this grave. She was dragged from it.
At school, Giles is trying to figure out how to ask out Jenny Calendar while Willow is signing up for the school science fair, which is always won by Chris, Sunnydale's resident scientific genius. Meanwhile, Chris's creepy friend Eric takes pictures of all the girls, including Buffy, Willow, and Cordelia. The Scoobies spend the evening checking the graves of other dead girls, then return to the library and compare notes with Angel and Cordelia.
Somebody's been digging up the bodies of dead girls.
I know. We found some of them.
You mean like 2 of the 3?
I mean like some of them. Like parts.
The Scoobies do a locker search and discover evidence pointing to Chris and Eric. In Chris's basement, we discover what he and Eric are up to, assembling a girl from the parts they dug up, in order to give Chris's brother Daryl, who Chris reanimated after his death, a similarly reanimated companion. Meanwhile, Giles tries to ask Jenny out and fails, but she helps him out, and they plan to go to the football game together. Giles returns to the library with news.
I spoke to a press person this morning about the remains. The police have finished sorting through them, and apparently they found 3 heads in the dumpster.
They only had 3 girls.
Precisely.
So they don't have the whole package?
In Frankenstein's basement, Chris doesn't want to kill a girl to get a usable head, but Daryl insists, and when Eric gives him a choice of girls from the high school, Daryl selects Cordelia. Buffy checks out Chris's basement, but doesn't find anything before running out. At the school, Eric and Chris try to kidnap Cordelia, but Buffy gets there just in time to rescue her. Cordelia rushes out to cheer at the game, and Buffy finds and confronts Chris, who confesses all. They rush to the basement to find Daryl.
He's not here. Where else could he be?
But he would never go out. Unless...
He's gonna pick up where you left off.
Willow and Xander find nothing at Eric's house, then show up at the game and crash Giles' date with Jenny. Cordelia goes under the bleachers to get a drink of water, and Daryl kidnaps her, dragging her to an abandoned warehouse where Eric prepares to take off her head. Buffy interrupts and fights Daryl. Gasoline spills and catches fire, and Xander, Willow, Giles, and Jenny rescue Cordelia and Eric from the blaze. Daryl jumps on top of the assembled girl body and dies, again, as the building burns down. Buffy comforts Chris outside as the fire department deals with the fallout, and Angel shows up looking for Buffy.
I saw the fire. I figured you'd be here. Is everyone okay?
Yeah. We're okay.
Later, Buffy and Angel walk home together through Sunnydale's most romantic graveyard and clear up their misunderstandings.
I don't love Xander.
Yeah, but he's in your life. He gets to be there when I can't. Take your classes, eat your meals, hear jokes and complaints. He gets to see you in the sunlight.
Okay, so Noelle. Some assembly required. Kind of a difficult episode in a lot of ways. From a narrative perspective, I think it's actually pretty well written. But it's troublesome in a lot of different ways. I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. What did you think?
Oh my God. I really like this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a horrible thing to say. I don't like this episode, but there's a lot to look at and unpack in this episode. And
Yeah.
I really enjoy a Frankenstein's monster. I gotta say.
Sure. It's always fun to kind of have that sort of story to play with.
That works for me. But
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, when I was looking at this and trying to figure out kind of like, why do a Frankenstein's monster story other than that's such a great classic monster to look at? I started thinking about the title and some assembly required. And, obviously we're talking about this science project, which were they really going to submit that for the science fair?
Oh, no, he wasn't going to submit Daryl for the science fair, but I think he was going to do something like based on the science he did to reanimate Daryl as part of that.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't think he was going to bring his dead brother to the science fair, although he would have gotten an A.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Right.
But over and over throughout the episode, we have characters assembling.
Right.
And there's this undercurrent of fractured masculinity, for lack of a better term.
Right.
And I feel like we get to see that in all of our male characters throughout this episode in one form or another.
All right. Let's dig into that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So we start off, I mean, we have our villains, obviously. We have Chris and Eric, and Daryl and that whole storyline. But there's also, we have our regularly occurring male characters, Angel, Xander, Giles. We've got Angel's jealousy of Xander and his feelings of sort of inadequacy at not being in Buffy's life the way Xander is. Giles is, not really successful attempts to ask Jenny out, and he needs Buffy's coaching and the kids' support, which seems sort of weird to me. I mean, I know the Scoobies have this unique relationship with Giles, but I can't imagine ever coaching an adult in my life on the nuances of dating.
Yeah, it is a little weird. I mean, I again, we have this kind of strange equalization that goes on because Giles, his primary relationship with these kids is not teacher-student, and it's not even adult-child. They're colleagues. Right. They're a team. He is the manager. He oversees things, but they all play a role, and they all kind of have equal status. Now, in his personal life, that is adult and children, but their relationship really is more of colleagues than it is of a student teacher, adult child, parent child. We do have some of those. I mean, obviously it's a very, father-daughter relationship with Buffy, but it's still like on an equal level. If anything, Buffy's the one who's probably got the highest level of power in the group, So, I don't know. I find it really interesting, but I do like that we have a personal story for Giles, which is something that we haven't had up until now. We haven't put him in a personal situation. And in order to tell these stories really effectively, we need that personal space. And that, of course, is the space in which he is fractured.
Yeah. He's not capable. He's so capable in other areas.
Yeah.
And this is an area where he's not.
I love it.
Yeah. And then, Daryl, obviously, I mean, he's literal fractured masculinity because he's been reconstructed. But there's also the sense that he's less than if he's alone. And with Daryl, the characters talk about his loneliness and try to solve it with this female companion. But what he really seems to miss is playing football and his team. When we see him, when he comes to the game and we see him under the bleachers and he's watching what's going on, the eyeline match that we get for him is on, he's not leering at the cheerleaders. He's watching these guys play the game and then celebrate with each other. They hug and they high five, and it's this male bonding and camaraderie that Daryl seems to be longing for, much more so than any sort of, female attention or companion or dating life.
Right. It's that longing for community. And I think we have a lot of themes, we have themes of isolation and community throughout this whole thing. I mean, that's what Frankenstein is about, and so it is actually, it's a really nice moment. I mean, for me in watching Daryl, because Daryl, the only people that he has any contact with are his brother and his brother's creepy ass friend, Eric. Right. And they're scientists. He's an athlete, right? So here he is looking at everything that had any meaning to him, which was this experience of playing football, of being on a team. I mean, playing football is not something that you can do in isolation. You are automatically part of a community if you're part of a team. Right. And there he had a team, and he doesn't have that anymore. And that is masculine community. Masculine community is something that doesn't get a whole lot of play in pop culture, although I think we're getting more of it now. And mostly when we see masculine community, it is in terms of some kind of a team. It is in terms of a work team or an athletic team, something like that, because that's the one place where men are allowed, kind of to be in community generally, throughout our culture. So it's really interesting that here we have his goals so tied to reanimating a girl so that there would be a girl who wouldn't ever leave him, which is really, really terrible. And it's all about having a girl and having that one romantic companion. And we're telling all these romantic stories and these romantic pairings throughout in all of our stories in this episode. But the thing that he misses, which is something we don't get in the actual, in anything that he says, but we get it in that one wistful moment when he's watching that team of athletes work together. And I thought that was really powerful, really interesting, and kind of antithetical to this whole idea that he needs one woman,
Yeah. Well, and if you wanted to go deep into the subtext of that, you could talk about taking all of that longing for masculine community and connection, and specifically the physical connection that the players have, because they're in the moment that he's watching them, I think they actually are embracing after someone has, made this. So it's masculine community, but also, physical closeness. Yes. And I think that, if you wanted to, you could do a reading of Daryl where what he's longing for is that male companionship, but because the only outlet for men in heterosexist society is romance, sex, romance with a woman, all of that desire for the camaraderie of being on the team and being in close physical contact with other men gets put into this idea of a sexual relationship with a woman.
Right.
If you wanted to, wanted to develop an entire psychology for Daryl, who really is not a very nuanced character. Right. But it's an interesting question. What is, it seems to me that Chris is very invested in making good on his promise to his brother.
Yes.
Chris's story seems to get sort of tangled up in what I read as Eric's desire to create this female monster.
Well, they literally fractured this character, right? Because all you need is the one, right? All you need to do what Eric and Chris do, you only need one guy, except that we've got the good conflicted side and then the evil, just no worries about anything that he's doing side.
Oh, yeah.
And in order for us to have any compassion for Chris, who lost his brother, whose mother has gone deep into grief so far that she cannot come out and connect with him, whose father is apparently just gone, that we want to have compassion for him, but what he's doing is so monstrous that we have to push that, that motivation onto Eric, that Eric is the one who is motivating the monstrous part of this, and Chris is just sort of riding along. So, I mean, Chris I see as two sides. He is both Chris and Eric, but we fracture him down the middle and put all of the goodness on one side, all of the badness on the other, so that we can separate that out and actually still have compassion for Chris.
Now, do you think that is intentional storytelling so that we can have this, so that Chris can be okay, so that he's not a monster?
I think so. I think so that we can have some compassion, because if you look at, and even so, like Chris, once again, like at the end of this episode, we have the complete evasion of consequence. Like Daryl dies. He was already dead in the first place. So he kind of went back to where he should have been by nature. Like, they subverted nature. They violated the laws of nature. And so the only thing to do with that is to reset back to where it was. So when Daryl dies, that's kind of where he's supposed to be. Right. But we have Chris and Eric at the end who have really no consequence. I mean, Eric got knocked out, but Giles gets knocked out twice an episode. So that's not a thing, and so we don't really get a consequence for what they've done, in this episode at all. And yeah, so I don't know, like, I think that in order for us to be okay with, with how this ends, we have Buffy comforting Chris at the end instead of being like, hey, this is a monstrous thing that you did.
Yeah. Like what the actual fuck, Chris?
Right. So he gets like a cup of hot cocoa and some marshmallows at the end of this, when there really should be consequence. And especially there should be consequence for Eric, but we don't get that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Eric is just horrible. I mean, he's just awful from the get-go. And of course he's supposed to be.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. He's supposed to be just monstrous. And of course, because we have Eric being our embodiment of predatory masculinity, Xander gets to be pretty decent in this episode.
Right. And this is the thing. Whenever we directly look at toxic masculinity, Xander's suddenly okay. But it's like when we don't have a prevalent theme of toxic masculinity in an episode, Xander somehow has to be our delivery mechanism for it. And I'm not sure why that is. Why, like, we can't have an episode without toxic masculinity. If we look directly at it, Xander can suddenly be okay.
Right. There's something about... Sometimes I have this sense that the writers just can't help themselves, that we just had to make that sexist joke. We just couldn't.
It was right there.
It was right there. But really, guys. But speaking of sort of fractured or incomplete masculinity, we have Xander and Angel. I love so much. And Xander's... The way that Xander dials up the snark and dials up his little attitude when they're all in the library and Xander's there with Buffy and Cordelia and Angel come in. And Xander's obvious disdain for Angel is so emblematic of poor Xander. I mean,
and he's so patently jealous, you know, which is interesting because, Angel cops to being jealous of Xander, but he's not jealous of Xander because he possesses Buffy and Buffy might like Xander. That's not it. He's jealous of Xander because Xander gets to see her in the sunlight, because Xander gets to share a part of her life. So we have this, this kind of immature jealousy from Xander, which is all about possession of Buffy, and that he's the boy in Buffy's life, right?
Yeah.
And then we get this. I don't know if there's a way of looking at jealousy as being mature, but this is like almost a mature envy from Angel. That it isn't about possession of Buffy, and it isn't about like he is going to care about Buffy regardless of whether she likes him back. Like it is about Xander gets to experience a part of Buffy that Angel just can't.
Yeah.
And that's what he's jealous of. And I think that is so endearing. And, you put them up next to each other. And, granted, I mean, Xander's like a 16-year-old boy.
Right.
So, I mean, the fact that he's not perfectly mature and whatever, that's fine. It's like, this is fine, Xander. It is okay for Xander not to be perfect.
Right.
What is not okay is for us to look at it and say, oh, that's fine. Boys will be boys. And I don't think that we do that here. I think what we do is we have a reflection of this immature jealousy that's about possession versus this kind of more mature, I wouldn't even call it jealousy or envy. It's like a wistfulness about what Angel doesn't get to have with Buffy, what he doesn't get to experience with her.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really nice.
I love that. I love Angel in this episode.
I love Angel too.
And I do think that it's jealousy. I think that with Angel, I think that what it is it's the understanding that jealousy is not about the other people in a relationship. When you're jealous of a relationship, you're jealous of, ideally, what you're responding to is what these people have together.
Yes.
And in Buffy and Xander's case, what they have together is their daily life. That's what Angel is talking about.
Yeah.
But his awareness is connected to the fact that jealousy is about him. It's about his longing to have this thing that he can't have. And
he's not mad or mean about it, right? Like, I mean, Xander is so snarky to Angel. Oh, Angel,
Yeah.
But Angel isn't like that to Xander. Like, Angel isn't mean to Xander, and he's not, like, possessive with Buffy. Like, he's not playing games with it. He just says, this is a feeling that I have.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, we have the wonderful bookends of Angel and Buffy in the graveyard at the beginning, and then again at the end. And when they're fighting, and he says, "You always bring up the vampire thing," which I just love. It's so every time we fight, you bring up the vampire thing.
I know.
It's so delightful. I really like Angel, although I have concerns about Angel when he's following Cordelia in the parking lot.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, really? Like, he really thought...
It's completely stupid. And it is, that whole scene is predicated on the idea that nobody has the ability to say, oh, hey, how you doing?
Right.
And nobody has peripheral vision at all. Like, all Cordelia can see are his shoes, And so she runs and jumps into but like, he's right there.
Yeah.
Like he's right there. That situation is completely manufactured, completely contrived, and it doesn't work at all, but it gets Cordelia into the garbage can where she finds body parts, and there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we'll talk about wardrobe a little bit because there's some great wardrobe in this episode, but what the actual fuck is Angel's jacket? That tan beige, what? What is he wearing?
That bothers you more than the velour?
Yes.
Okay, the velour smoking jacket is what throws me off. This I was fine. But I don't know. Tan jackets apparently are a thing that will send people into a tizzy. So I don't know.
I don't know. It just looks so wrong. It looks so wrong. I don't.
I guess it was left over from the 70s, I mean, you build up a wardrobe over 241 years, and eventually you're like, hey, I haven't worn this in a while.
I just like, what? Really? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I guess when they show up in the library and Cordelia, I love Cordelia's like the clinging vine on Angel.
Oh, it's so
sweet.
Funny.
So funny. I guess they look a little bit better together with she's wearing the yellow Sunnydale cheerleader.
Yeah, cheerleader.
I don't know. I don't know. But that jacket and the way he grins at her when he sort of appears in the frame, like it's weird. It's a weird scene.
I don't know. Like the Angel and Cordelia relationship, obviously, at this point, we have nothing else to inform it now, right, because I'm also doing Still Dead with Kelly Jones about Angel, and that of course is after season 3 when Cordelia moves over there and they have a completely different relationship. For me, it's like, oh, this was the first time that Cordelia and Angel, or like whatever. It's really fun for me to see it, but in the actual moment, it's a weird thing, you know, like the whole relationship between them is just weird.
Yeah, they can't. It seems to me like the show can't decide what Cordelia's relationship with Angel is. Mm-hmm. She is, obviously.
She's after Angel. I mean, the first thing she says when she sees him in the beginning is, hello, salty goodness. Like, she obviously, likes Angel and thinks that he's attractive and all of that. And so but the thing is that between Angel and Cordelia, there is like the age difference, the power differential is so massive. And he doesn't even look at her. Like, he's there to like take care of her and make sure she gets home safe or whatever, you know, but like he is not at all, into this thing or into Cordelia, or I don't think he even sees Cordelia, you know. I think Cordelia is like, to him, just another puppy in the room that he has to make sure is safe,
Right.
But it is kind of funny to see that because there's such a difference with Angel and Cordelia that anything, if he looked at her in any way, it would be so inappropriate. And yet, Angel and Buffy is fine.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of reasons. We've talked about that quite a bit. There are a lot of reasons why that's okay. But, I think that this is one of the things that was really interesting to me in this episode is this, like, we have this literal objectification of women down to body parts. She is a foot. She is an ankle. She is a head. Right?
Yeah.
And we have so much misogyny, all of it packed into Eric with that douchey proto goatee. I don't know what the hell that was about.
What is
I don't even know. But he is beyond disgusting. I mean, even when like in the opening when we don't even know how horrible he is and he's just taking the pictures of the girls and this obnoxious, like flashing the camera in their faces and being, aggressive in every possible way that a man can be aggressive. He is just like, honestly, 20 pounds of misogyny packed in a 5-pound bag. I mean, it is insane, and then we have that one moment from him where he says, well, hell, it's just one lousy girl. Like he is so into this project. I don't think just because of the science, like I could forgive or at least understand somebody who's so into the science. Like, we did this the first time, but maybe this time we can do this and we can do that. Right. But it is active misogyny. He just hates women. And it's so gross and greasy, throughout the episode, and feels just awful. It would be one thing if Chris was really about, reanimating his brother, right? And it was Eric who was the scientist and Eric who was the Frankenstein, right? Who just like did this thing and was so excited about next time we can do this and we can make it better. That I think would have been a little more interesting than just running down this cement block of misogyny and dropping it in the middle of this episode. It felt really, really like heavy and weighted and gross to me.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of those storylines that, for me, the more I dug into it and the more I thought about, or what are they saying with this?
Right.
Just the grosser it gets. I mean, the idea, first of all, the idea that these 3 dead girls are literally a collection of parts that we're going to cut them up and pick and choose the best pieces, presumably.
Well, my presumption on that was they'd all been in a car accident together. So one had a broken ankle, one had a broken arm. You take the parts that are functional between the 3 of them, right?
But apparently Daryl fell on his face when he was rock climbing and still is, they still managed to get Daryl back.
In one piece.
In one piece.
Sure. Because it was Daryl. Because Daryl is an actual person and the girls are just collections of parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah. Well, and also, like, Daryl fell hard enough to die. Yeah. And they reanimated him, although it appears that he doesn't have the ability to heal anymore because it's been at least some months and his face is still just stitched together. Yeah. So, yeah, Daryl is a weird question. And, the girls are a weird question, and the way in which we approach the girls. And also that, for Daryl, who died and was brought back, we're going to just kill these girls because girls have, unquestioned less value.
Oh, yeah.
Than Daryl does, than the boy does. Mm-hmm. And that is something that while we're looking at how gross the misogyny is, that is something that is just, it goes unquestioned throughout. Chris, subscribes to that. Daryl subscribes to that. Eric subscribes to that. Women are of less value than men. And that honestly, like, is not questioned. Eric's misogyny is not questioned. It's supposed to be gross. I mean, it definitely is played. He's the bad guy, Mm-hmm. And there's that one moment where Xander says, oh, I thought their heads were pretty enough or whatever. And he's like, but I'm not as gross as that guy. And I'm like, not as gross, but you're sliding into that territory. Yeah. Because, the value of a woman is in how she looks. It's how pretty she is. Jenny Calendar is relatively dulcet, especially for a man in your age bracket, right? That's the thing about Jenny Calendar that makes her, an interesting prospect for Giles. Not that she's smart, that she knows things like about, all of the stuff like the Hellmouth and all of it. Like, she has an interest in that and she's studied and she's, all of those things that she is. She's a bunch of other things aside from pretty, but it's pretty that is the only quality that's called out, by Xander. I mean, Giles is, doesn't say anything one way or the other, but it's presumed that Giles sees much more in her other than that she is, relatively dulcet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was, it's interesting that even while calling it out, we're still living in a space where some of these presumptions are just taken as read, that women, of course, women just have less value than men. We're not going to question that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if and Eric's gross justification, if you take a life to make a life, it comes out like he's just so unruffled by the idea of killing someone that it really, like, to Eric, he says it's just one lousy girl, and he so delights in the selection, in Daryl's selection process, choosing Cordelia from the photographs, and the way there's something so predatory and gross the way he throws the pictures down in front of Daryl. Yeah. Without looking at the pictures. He's looking at Daryl to gauge his reaction. Mm-hmm. It is so gross and so, he is literally throwing these women at Daryl's feet with no regard for anything other than this project. He says, how's my baby? About the body, which, first of all, we're making this for Daryl, not for Eric. Right. But I get the idea that Eric is way invested in this idea. I mean, you would have to be, but he's way invested in this way that's just, it's so icky. And I really, really wish that Eric was the one who died in the fire.
Oh, yeah. No, there should have been some freaking consequence for Eric. And the thing is that, like, what do you do? Like, how do you send to the police somebody who, I mean, he tried to kidnap Cordelia. He could go to the police for that. They could take him in for that. But there's no, like, laws on the books about reanimating dead tissue or grave robbing. I guess he could go for that. Right. But there should be, like, the police should be there throwing Eric into the back of a damn cop car. And and that's the thing. Like, we don't have real consequence for this. We don't have real pushback on this presumed idea that women have less value than men. And that's where this episode, while it does openly shine a light on toxic masculinity and misogyny, it doesn't really say that this is worthy of punishment. Even Chris gets a cup of cocoa. I mean, not literally, but it's a cup of cocoa at the end, right? Oh, poor Chris, how sad for you. Your brother died. But I don't know, but that kind of moves us into one of the things that I saw here, because I'm seeing this Frankenstein, reflection, and that has to do with isolation and community and the power of community and all of that and being rejected by community. But here we've got themes of grief as well. We've got a lot of grief. We've got, Chris is in grief over Daryl. Yeah. So he loses his perspective and he reanimates Daryl and brings him back to life, right? His mother is so lost to grief that she doesn't even see Chris anymore. All she does is watch these videos of Daryl. When Buffy comes in, she barely speaks to her unless they're talking about Daryl, Yeah. So we have these grief. We have Cordelia playing up her grief to try to get attention,
Yes.
early in the episode. And the grief is about the loss of relationship, right? And so Daryl is also in grief for the loss of his community, for the loss of his athletic team, for the loss of the games, for the loss of that, masculine community. So there's so much grief in this episode. And it seems like, if you're in grief, like Chris is in grief and he does this monstrous thing and he gives a space for Eric to do monstrous things. And so somehow because of his grief, that's okay. Somehow because of the mother's grief, it's okay that she's ignoring her other child, Yeah. And not going back into the world. She never leaves the house, right? She just sits there smoking cigarettes and watching the videotapes, So I don't know, I thought it was interesting because in Frankenstein, in the original material, right, the monster is just made. The monster is just made and he's so monstrous. And then, of course, the person who made him abandons him, and he's sort of left in this space of ultimate isolation, tries to connect with a family, can't. But we don't really deal with the issues of grief until the monster starts killing people that are important to, the doctor, Frankenstein, right? So it's interesting in here how we have wound this idea of grief almost as a justification for monstrous behavior and for creating a monster.
And there's definitely, Frankenstein is very much connected to the idea of men creating life and what happens when men, do this thing that women are supposed to do. I'm using the biggest air quotes that ever air quoted.
Right.
And the consequences for that kind of I want to say ego, this sort of ego-driven creation as opposed to what nature intended.
What nature intended. Well, right. And the thing is that you're violating the laws of nature when you take something dead and bring it back to life. Not just that it can't be done. It shouldn't be done. You know? So I think that's really interesting. And that is interesting. I hadn't seen that reflection on, right, the one thing that women can do. The one thing that women can do that men can't do, right? The one thing. And that's what they've got to take.
Right.
Right.
Well, and we call that out a little bit in the graveyard when Giles and Xander are digging up the grave.
Right.
And, it's clearly, so we've clearly established at this point that we're doing Frankenstein. And Buffy says, men dig up the corpses, women have the babies.
Right.
Which I enjoy so much because it feels to me like she's just calling out men, not Giles and Xander particularly, but men in general, on their sexism. You wanted it this way, so
right, exactly. So now you got to pay the price.
Now you got to pay the price.
You get all that male privilege. You dig up the graves.
Exactly. You take your male privilege, and we will sit here and eat donuts and and chat
and talk about boys
But of course, then Buffy's the only one with who's willing to open the coffin.
Exactly.
And she just pushes him out of the way and all right.
Yeah.
Jumps down and does her duty. But we do have a little bit of play on gender roles with that line, and with Cordelia clinging to Angel, and then with Giles and Jenny, which is really the bright spot in this episode for me. Can we talk about Giles and Jenny and their adorable?
Oh my God, it's so sweet.
They're
I
so
love this
cute.
whole thing. I love that he is so uncomfortable in this space. Like, he has such a difficult time trying to figure out how to ask her out. And then, we have him practicing in the beginning, and then Xander and Buffy are making fun of him and teasing him. And then he goes to actually ask her out and does no better than he did with the chair. He can't get the words out. And what I really like Jenny is always a problem for me in a lot of ways, but I really loved how seamlessly she handled that situation for him. That she was like, oh, well, if you've got something to tell me, why don't you tell me the night of the game? We'll go out to dinner before. You like Mexican?
Yeah.
And she just completely took charge of that situation. And I mean, this is the thing. You look at these classic gender roles. The boy asks the girl out and the girl says yes or no or whatever. And that's how that goes, And so instead of playing to that, she sees that he's interested. She sees that he's trying to ask her out, and she just makes it easy for him. She just says, yeah, let's do it. And it's not even about gender roles. It's just about, I have a thing, you got a thing, let's have a thing. She's okay with it, and she's so in charge. And I really kind of like that, and I like the way she was like, oh yeah, we'll go on a second date, and did you and he goes, oh, second date, she's running this whole thing, and Giles is just there, and and I think it's really nice that she, because I didn't see it as her overpowering the situation or whatever. I just saw it as her being kind and not making him go through this whole thing, not teasing him, not playing games with him. She's like, yeah, let's just do it. It was really nice. So I like Jenny Calendar. Oh, and I realized I stole a joke from this that I didn't even realize I'd stolen.
Oh,
she goes, oh, please call me Jenny. Miss Calendar's my father.
And
I used that in a book once. Sometimes these things happen and you don't realize where you get them from, and I remember using that in a book once, and I was like, oh, and I didn't realize I'd gotten it from. So sorry for the, minor plagiarism, Ty King. It was a great line, and I used it. I'm sorry.
It is a great line. Yeah. We get some really, really good Jenny in this episode.
Yes.
I don't want to like her. She's problematic. But I really, really like her in this episode.
I like her in this episode.
I like her in this episode. I like how I don't read her so much as being kind to Giles, although I think she is. I read it as she's just completely at ease. This is her.
Yes.
She is fine.
She's comfortable with herself. Yeah.
She's comfortable with herself. She's comfortable with the dynamic of connecting with people. Right.
Yeah.
Because that was how she was introduced, was connecting people through the internet. But still, she's got this group that she brings together. So this is just, yep, this is what you do. You just talk to people, and yeah, of course we go to the game, and it's just no big deal for her. Whereas it's a huge deal for him. And I think we do get a little bit of a gender role reversal in that we're used to seeing in fiction, the woman kind of obsessing over, oh, is he going to ask me out? And how's he going to, and it's this long drawn out process. And Jenny just doesn't, it doesn't ruffle her. I absolutely love her little yelp when the bell rings. They're walking together and the bell rings and she's just, oh, gotta go. And their exchange feels so genuine.
Yes.
It feels really, the way she talks to him, the way she peeks her head out the door.
Yeah.
She really, she's got to go teach this class. The bell rang, it's time. But she also wants to continue to talk to him.
Yeah.
And I mean, for my money, they just make her look so pretty in that scene. She's got her skirt, that little, sort of flirty skirt with the matching tights, and then that open knit sage sweater that she just... She looks great. She's a nice match to Giles. She looks a little bit more conservative than she sometimes does, which looks great with Giles in his head to toe tweed. Thank you very much.
Right.
It's just, but I love that scene. I love it. It's so, it's so charming. It just charms me. And then his little hop as he turns around to leave, and he's like, "Oh, that went well," and he's got this giant grin on his face.
Smiles.
Yes, little smile, and he
when Giles
turns around. I'm like,
yeah.
"Oh, I'm rooting for that love story so hard in that moment because damn, they're adorable."
I know, it's really sweet. I didn't like her at the football game as much,
no,
because she dipped into that kind of aggressive, antagonistic space, and I know she was being fun and flirty, but there was just something about the way she does that stuff, and I don't know if it's the actress or if it's the way it was written, but it's just like, oh, and you're going to mock the national pastime of my, and just like being a jerk about it.
And her little rap about football being, what is it? It's like unbridled aggression or something like that.
Right. It doesn't have the grace of basketball or the poetry of baseball. And I'm like, whatever.
Really?
Like, you don't care about this stuff. You're a freaking computer nerd. Like,
and
I mean, I know that's like stereotypical and everything, but I'm like, she doesn't strike me as the kind of person who really genuinely cares about sports that much.
Yeah.
So it was weird to see her kind of make that speech. It felt out of character. Although, we don't know her that well. I mean, she could be a big sports nut. There's nothing to say that that's, mutually exclusive with being a computer person. So
right. And there we go.
Fine, but...
And there we go again with a little bit of a play on gender roles, that it's the woman in this relationship that is into sports and into the nuance of sports. She follows more than one sport, presumably.
Right.
So, it feels kind of cheap to me. We'll just make the woman aggressive and make the man passive, and we'll establish a cute relationship that way. But for whatever reason, it works for me. I like Jenny and Giles, at least at this stage. So, sorry, everybody.
That's okay. No, I like them too. I mean, I do. And actually, there's a lot of, it's very interesting because as we move forward, Ty King also wrote Passion, as we talked about at the beginning. And Passion is the episode where Jenny Calendar breaks my heart, So, like, there's actually some good Jenny Calendar stuff happening.
Yeah.
And some great Giles stuff happening. It's so powerful. And I think Ty King actually did a really good job. Like the narrative in this episode moves really nicely. It escalates nicely. I mean, I definitely have some questions about some of the presumptions that are in the story. But there's really good stuff. There's good lines. There's good Xander. I love this moment where Xander's like talking with Willow and they're walking in and he goes, and speaking of love, and Willow says, we were talking about the reanimation of dead tissue. And Xander says, do I deconstruct your segues?
Yep.
And I loved that. I loved that it showed us a smart Xander because, last week we had, Willow spelling out bitch and he goes, bicka, which I would have liked better if it was like he knew exactly what he was doing and he was just playing with it, but it didn't seem that way. I don't like when we play our characters stupid to get the joke. I like when we play our characters smart to get the joke. And so I really I loved that moment from Xander. It was really, really fun. And he was good. I love when he's talking to Giles and he goes, that whole stork thing is a smokescreen.
I love that. That was great.
It's adorable. It's great. This is great Xander. And this is, I would say, 99% light Xander, maybe 1% Shadow with the idea about the heads being attractive, but it's very, very cute.
Yeah. Xander is very cute in this episode. Although he raises a question for me when he talks about Jenny being attractive for someone in Giles's age bracket.
Yes.
And I could record scratch right there. I was like, all right, hang on a second. So I gotta go. I'm like, I'm going to the Google machine because this is ridiculous. So, I mean, and this is, I have several patriarchal rants for this episode, but this is one of the lesser ones.
Yes.
So, I mean, first of all, the word dulsome is real yucky. Don't use that word. Please don't use that. That sounds just gross.
Yeah, she's reasonably dulsome, especially for someone in your age bracket.
Yeah, no. But at the time of filming Anthony Stewart Head was 43. And Robbie Lamore was 27.
She was 27?
She was 27 when they filmed this.
Oh, my God. You know who else was 27? Charisma Carpenter.
Oh, my
So Robbie Lamore and Charisma Carpenter are the same age.
They're the same age. Now,
they're the same age. And Xander, Nicholas Brendan, also about 26, 27 about that time.
Okay. All right. So, and here's the thing. I mean, there's a long tradition in all of acting of people playing older or younger than they actually are. I acknowledge that that's a thing, but I would just like to point out, because this is a sore spot for me, that is not the same age bracket. 43 and 27 is not the same age bracket. And by the half your age plus 7 rule about age disparity in sexual relationships, she is 18 months too young for him.
Yeah.
So.
Well, okay. First of all, I think the character herself is at least mid-30s.
Oh, yeah. She's 35
she's supposed to be
easily.
mid-30s, so that's fine. You know, the character is what
it's
matters.
Fine.
Half your age plus 7 is still bullshit. So we're not going with that, because that's crazy.
Minimum age.
Minimum, right?
Yes.
No, the age problem with women and with how women are. Like, you know, we have women in a lot of circumstances playing, you know, like very young women playing older, or, you know, women who are in their mid-20s. Like, basically all of the actresses are in their mid-20s. And that's where they work from. You work from 20 to 30, and that's where you get work. So if you're playing somebody who's 45 or you're playing somebody who's 16, they're all the same age, you know, especially at this time, because we can only handle women if they are in that 20 to 30 age range, you know, like culturally. It's better now. Everything's better now. Back then, that was kind of how it was done. So the fact that we have two women of the exact same age, one playing a 16-year-old, one playing 35, like, that is something that is a Hollywood problem, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But if we're talking just within the text, right?
Yeah.
For Xander, I forgive Xander for saying that, because he's 16. When you're 16, anybody who's over 19 is old. You know, anybody who's over 20 is old. And so, like, your conception of age, you know, is kind of thrown all over the place. But yeah, it's you know, it's a little bit troublesome. It's like the 1% that's not so great with Xander in this episode.
Well, and, you know, and that has much less to do with Xander and much more to do with me and my sudden curiosity about.
I look at that all the time, because you look at these people, like these actresses, and no matter what age the character is, the actress is always between 20 and 30.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like, it's bad for women in every possible way. It's bad for the actresses. It's bad for women who watch these actresses and think when they're 16, they're supposed to look 27. And when they're 42, they're supposed to look 27.
Yes.
Like, that's not possible. You know, it's an impossible standard. And yet that's the standard that we have, you know, lived with. If we haven't been conscious about it, it's subconscious. And not to mention that there's an entire beauty industry that is based on nothing other than you're wrong the way that you are.
Yes.
That women should not look the way that actual women look.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
That's a whole other rant. That's a whole other discussion.
I mean, that is my ARG the patriarchy rant, or at least it's part of it. If we want to skip way ahead to, you know, what's your least favorite part of this episode?
Go for it, babe. Do your patriarchy bit.
So the patriarchy, I mean, I want to say it's the entire fucking episode, and, you know, fight me on that.
Right,
you know,
yeah.
It's just one lousy girl. Eric's pornography collection so prodigious that it scared Xander, which, hello, that's a whole... Anyway.
Yeah, you can unpack that whole thing for a while.
That we could unpack that forever, but, you know, we're not going to do that. But Daryl, looking at the reconstructed girl, she's headless, by the way, says she's beautiful. We've got a three stitched together corpses on this table with no head. Yeah. And she's beautiful. And she
is beautiful.
Nope. But the thing that I really want to talk about with this reanimation fantasy is the choice to use parts from multiple bodies. Now, you've suggested that maybe this is because in the car accidents, they were mangled somehow beyond, you know, repair. But of course, Daryl is obviously mangled and they have managed to reassemble him. So I don't know.
Right.
I don't buy it. But the conversation around bodies and women's bodies in particular almost inevitably veers into talking about flaws or trouble areas or, you know, whatever individual parts we're going to zoom in on. And it's bullshit. I mean, human beings are whole beings, not a collection of parts to be broken down and further broken down. But that's not this idea that your body is a collection of parts is not biology. It's not a reflection of our bodies. It's a reflection of capitalism.
Yes.
And I'm about to make a pop cultural reference that's going to show my age, and I don't care.
That's okay.
I don't care. There's an episode. Well, I mean, I grew up watching all of those sitcoms, and there's this episode of Frasier where Frasier and Niles visit a spa. And as they're leaving, they're handed bags of products that are tailored to their individual needs, quote unquote. And Niles looks into his bag and says, "I've never even heard of eyelash conditioner." And Frasier says, hence the brittle lashes. And that's funny. You know, that stuck with me. That's funny because, you know, they're men and it's the 90s and it seems patently ridiculous. But also, I ended up down an internet rabbit hole when I was looking up how old all of the actors in Buffy the Vampire Slayer were at the time of filming. And I discovered that you can absolutely buy eyelash-specific conditioners. But of course, they're marketed almost exclusively to women.
Well,
and,
of course.
You know, and hey, like deep condition your eyelashes all you want. If that is what makes you happy, it makes you feel fabulous, go for it. Do it.
Right.
But you're not less than if you don't. You're not.
Right. If your lashes are less than perfect, if, you know, because it seems like for most women, this has been my experience, like knowing my friends, talking to women, spent most of my life talking to women, is that if you fix one thing, there's always something else that's not good enough. And that is absolutely a result of capitalism in the beauty industry, which is made to, you know, to feed you the poison and then sell you the cure, you know? And that's not to say that I think there's anything wrong with makeup or with doing your hair. Like, I do my hair and my makeup every day, whether I'm leaving the house or not. Like, it's fun. I like it. It makes me feel good. And it makes me feel like it's a self-care thing, you know, for me to a certain degree, is that, you know, and also, like, I hate to say it, it's really true. If you leave the house as a woman and you have makeup on, people treat you better. It's just absolutely true. People are nicer to you. People are more friendly. They smile at you more. It makes you feel better throughout the day. But also there's the decorative part of it too. I like the reason why you get tattoos, right? You decorate your body. You wear the clothes that you want to wear because they're decorative, you know? It's fun. It's fun to decorate. Humans do that. They decorate their environment all the time. Why shouldn't they decorate their bodies? It's just that a lot of times it's not enough to decorate your body. It's that you have to fix all of the things that are wrong with your body, and then somehow that will make you acceptable, that you're not acceptable as you are until you've fixed all of your problems. And that makes billions and billions of dollars for people, predominantly men, you know, every year. And that's something that does need some serious looking at. I mean, Brene Brown always says, you know, when there's something that doesn't sit right with you, think about who benefits from that idea, you know, and especially who makes money off of that idea.
Absolutely.
And if somebody makes money off of that idea, then you need to seriously question that idea. So I don't think it's bad at all to wear makeup or to condition your eyelashes, get all the tattoos, wear what you want, decorate yourself, you know? I think the problem comes in when you feel like if you don't decorate yourself, that your value is decreased. And especially as a woman, like in this, the message is women have less value than men. That's the implicit message. We are looking directly at misogyny and saying, hey, that's gross, but we're not doing enough.
Right.
You know,
and this
to combat that idea.
premise that high school boys would cut 3 whole bodies up and choose the best parts is absolutely horrifying. And it's also an extension of that idea, that capitalist patriarchy perpetuate, that notion that women are not whole autonomous human beings, but a collection of parts to be used and objectified and commodified.
Certainly. Well, certainly.
And used by men for the benefit of men. I mean, that is the underlying driving notion of this whole narrative, is it not? The commodification of the female body. Mm-hmm. And that is...
Yeah, I mean, it's literal objectification. Mm-hmm. Women are a collection of parts, and they are objects.
Yes.
They are a leg. They are breasts. They are, a vagina. They are something to use and discard.
And to control.
And it's harmful. And to control. Absolutely.
Because that's the end goal, is to have someone who will stay with Daryl.
Right. He won't accept. Cordelia says, I'll go out with you. Mm-hmm. Don't kill me. Mm-hmm. And I'll go out with you, which, by the way, is a terrible bargain for any woman to ever have to make. No,
yeah.
But he doesn't want her unless she has no other options.
Which is so weird, because he comes at her with that rap about, I didn't realize how much it meant that you wanted to be with me.
Right.
And now I have a second chance. So he wants to take away her choice.
Yes, absolutely.
When she wanted to be with him, he didn't want her. But now that she's strapped to the table about to, lose her life, now it's okay for him.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's pretty freaking awful.
It's real bad.
So that is the patriarchy in a nutshell. And I mean, the thing is that the patriarchy is also really damaging to men, because men who treat other human beings, women, as objects, as pieces, as parts, are dehumanized as well. You lose your humanity when you treat other people that way. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's bad all around. It's just a bad thing, and it has to be called out.
It's not good.
No,
it's not good at all. I feel like we need to lighten it up just a little bit after that conversation of cutting women up into parts.
Yes.
I mean, it's just, I want to talk about wardrobe just a little bit, which brings us
let's go to wardrobe
into, or connects us a little bit to the cutting up of bodies. But we've got this lovely patchwork theme that gets carried through several of the wardrobe choices, including Chris's shirt. When we first see him, is a collection of squares, and then Willow also has squares on her shirt as they're talking at the beginning. And I mean, we didn't talk about Willow and Chris, but I like their interaction at the beginning, where she clearly has this kind of, it's just a little bit of a crush with some professional envy. It's very, very subtle and very cute. But Willow wears this great patchwork top later in the episode. Mm-hmm. And I love the choice to choose something stitched together in that way for the story about
interesting
stitching together.
I did not pick up on that at all, but you're absolutely right.
And then there's plaid everywhere. I mean, Giles wears a plaid scarf, which is something he absolutely would wear. Chris's mother wears a plaid house coat, and the curtains behind her are plaid. And there's this is not wardrobe, but the set department found this door for Chris's house. It's got
I noticed that.
Yeah, this wonderful triangular stained glass sort of a quilt.
All put together in pieces, right? The pieces make the whole. So we have all of this stuff that's all of these component parts that are stitched together in the visuals. That's so great.
Yeah. I also want to say Buffy wears plaid pants. I think in that last scene where that fight scene with Chris at the end. Or not Chris, Daryl. Daryl, when she fights Daryl. And that fight choreography is fantastic. There is some great martial arts choreography going on there. Although I do think it's funny that culturally we have this idea that if you are a reanimated monster of sorts, you're suddenly super strong.
No, I was wondering about that because I was like, if anything, it would seem to me here is a guy who died, was brought back, and can't heal.
Right.
So he would be less strong unless they did something to him that made him super strong. But there wasn't a supernatural element. This was a science project. This is something that was done with science, not with magic. So, so how is he able to hold his own against Buffy? How does that work?
I mean,
I don't know.
The only explanation is that it's kind of a thing in fiction because Dr. Frankenstein's creature was strong, but it was also huge.
Yes.
It was enormous.
But he specifically made Frankenstein to be that way. Like there was a scientific reason why he was larger than life. He was bigger. He was stronger, because of what Frankenstein had deliberately done. And here all they did was they brought him back and they stitched him up.
Yeah.
But like he was broken enough to die. He was injured. It appears he does not heal because his skin is not healing. He's still literally stitched together. So like that he would seem even weaker than your average human.
Yeah. I wonder if it's related to the idea of zombies not caring about their own bodies, that there's a strength in a strength that is sometimes literalized in not caring about what happens to your physical body because it's already been injured to the point of death. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. I think that's kind of interesting. But one thing that I do want to talk about so we can end on a really light and fun note is Cordelia and Xander.
Oh my God.
I love Cordelia and Xander. I think they're so sweet. They're starting to snark at each other, which is very fun. And, and I like the two of them together.
Yeah. Yeah. They are so funny with their back and forth in the library. And then
I know.
And then at the end, when Cordelia comes up to Xander.
Right. He's complaining about how they never get dates and they don't ever talk to anybody. And then she's like, I just wanted to thank you for saving my life. What you did there was so heroic. And I want to know if there's ever anything that I can do for you. And he's like, whatever, I'm talking.
Yeah.
And he just completely blows her off. It is very cute. It's a little ironic because then he turns to Will and says, I don't understand. Why don't we get dates?
Exactly.
So it was kind of sweet. But I mean, I love like everything. There's the moment where she's like, why are these terrible things always happening to me? And Xander goes, karma.
Yeah.
And it's really, they're just so cute. And I really love it. Although there's just one thing that after they come in, they find Angel and Cordelia. And Angel says, Cordelia told me the truth. And Xander says, well, that's got to be a first. And I'm like, no, Xander, you don't get to make that joke.
Yeah.
Because Cordelia is the one who always tells the truth.
Yeah.
So she's our truth teller. You can't make that joke at her expense. But it was really pretty cute. And, knowing that, of course, we're going to be seeing a Cordelia and Xander romance blooming, over the next, I think it's in the middle of this season that starts. That's going to be a lot of fun. And it's kind of fun to see that sort of building up, at this point.
Yeah.
So it's very, very cute. All right. So, Noelle, do we have a girl power moment of the week?
I think we do.
Okay, what is it?
I love Buffy saying, I think anyone who cuts dead girls into little pieces does not get the benefit of any doubt.
I like that.
And I may have cheered and pumped my fist a little bit. And she said that, like, that is a line you do not cross.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's call it out that this is not okay. Because unfortunately, we have to call it out that this is not okay because presumptions in our society kind of say, maybe not so bad, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty good. All right. So what's your favorite part?
My favorite part is Jenny and Giles. I love them so much. I love them so much. And it feels a little bit weird if I scratch it too hard, but Buffy coaching Giles on the nuances of dating. She's a techno pagan. Ask her to bless your laptop.
Right. Oh, and of course that has double entendre. That's kind of adorable.
Sure. Ask her to bless your laptop. Aw.
Yeah.
No, but they're delightful, and I really want better for Giles, you guys.
I do too. I know. But Jenny has her moments.
Yeah.
She gets better as we go. So, I mean, I am enjoying her more than I did in season 1. And that's granted a low bar,
right.
But still.
She gets better until she gets worse, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that when we talk about that.
We'll get there.
Oh, yeah. What's your favorite part, Lani?
Oh, God. Buffy and Angel. I love them. I like them together. I like the open and closed bookend scenes in the graveyard. In the open, they're in the graveyard. They're together, but they're apart. And in the closed, they're in the graveyard. They're completely together because they're being honest with each other. Mm-hmm. And it's just really, and it's so sweet the way he just holds out his hand, take her hand. She's like, I could walk you home.
Walk you
home. And then, of course, we swap those gender roles again because she's walking him home,
Yeah.
It's incredibly sweet. So I really enjoyed that.
All right, that's it for today. To join in the discussion on Twitter, follow Lani at Lani Diane Rich and me at Noelle Aloud, and use the hashtag StillPretty. You can also visit the Chipperish forums. Go to chipperish.com, click on forum, and join in the fun there.
Or you can keep Chipperish Media going to the tune of $1 a month or more and gain access to the live chat in Discord, where you can hang out with me and Noelle and all the Chipperish patrons who wish people wouldn't leave open graves lying around like this. Visit patreon.com/Chipperish to find out more.
You can also show your support for Still Pretty by going to Apple Podcasts and giving us a review. That's one of the most effective ways to show support for your favorite podcasts. Or you can use your social media platform of choice to tell your friends. Word of mouth is a powerful thing.
Yes, we will be back next time with School Heart, which is where Spike shows up, and I'm so excited. It's the 3rd episode of season 2. Until then, you don't just sneak up on people in a graveyard. You make noise when you walk. You stomp or yodel.